What's a dark secret / questionable practice in your profession which we regular folks would know nothing about? Many hotels often sell rooms multiple times. Used to work in airport hotel, knowing that chances are some guests won't arrive due to missed or delayed flights, so we sell more rooms than we have. You have guests checking out from 2/3 am due to early flights, so even though the room is technically still fizz, you quickly and sometimes poorly clean the room and tell the arriving unexpected guest or new booking there's a random computer issue and to wait 20 minutes and then check them into the departed guest's room praying. Multiple times I've had to run a kettle under a cold tap to hide the fact the previous guest used it 15 minutes before the new guest arrives. Airlines do this shit with airplane seats too. I once had a connecting flight while heading back to college, which was, luckily, not a long flight, and I had plenty of time. They pulled this crap and initially wanted someone to forego their seat for a $50 coupon. I let it go up to a $250 direct check and then volunteered, and they still tried to go with credit toward a ticket. I only took the check and got paid that amount for a couple hours watching Netflix in the airport. I've worked in fair a few and managed one of them, and the things you hear are beyond shocking. The first one I worked in had only been open for a few months when we had our first suicide. A middle-aged lady. Her body was taken out the back door and gone before the first guests had arrived, and guess what? They sold her room within hours of her dying in it. The bed hadn't been touched, neither had anything else. They removed the mess the paramedics had left in attempting to revive her. Needless to say, they then had to remove the occupants later that night when the police needed to search the room as a matter of procedure. They played dumb and said they wasn't aware the room had been sold, but they obviously did because they tidied up the mess. But things like this happen all the time. It wasn't until I was in a position to hear all the other dirty secrets that I was truly shocked. Honestly, I have so many I don't know where to begin. Lol. One that stands out was when one of the room attendants came into my office. I was the chief engineer there and asked me what she should do with this, then showed me a bag with what looked like a horse's penis in it. I took it, called environmental health to dispose of it safely. It could have had any number of diseases, but they recommended that I get it cremated by a vet as it would be quicker as it was late and a weekend. So I called around and had the phone put down on me a few times after explaining that I somehow have a horse's penis draped over my desk like a fucking scarf. Anyway, long story short, they came out to collect it and confirmed that it was indeed a horse's penis and thought it was the best story that they had ever heard. They didn't charge the hotel. They sent me a framed certificate a few days later, which I then hung on the office wall. The penis, just in case you are wondering, was found in a woman's room, in her fridge. Apparently it's a good luck charm in Kazakhstan. Not for the horse though. Example 1. Kid about 7 years old brought a can of hard lemonade in his lunch. He had packed it himself, and when asked about it, he thought it was juice. His mother had given it to him before, so he thought it was something he could bring to school. Turns out she had given it to him so he would sleep earlier and longer, so she could go out. Example 2. A child, about 9, started cussing me out in front of her peers. In the process of trying to talk her down, she said that she could talk to me however she wanted because her mom said so. After school, I talked with the parents. Turns out the girl was right, and apparently I shouldn't have made her kid do that stupid work anyway. Example 3. Playing a game as a class, and one of my kindergarten students, when she messed up, loudly said, OF***CK. I took her in the hall, and she said her mom says it all the time. Briefly explained that isn't a school appropriate word, and told her not to say it again. I talked to her mom after school, not telling her that her daughter heard her say it. Mom immediately awkwardly laughed and said her husband talks like that and she will let him know and remind him not to say that stuff in front of his 5-year-old. Example 4. I have literally lost count the number of times parents knowingly send their sick kids to school. They will swear up and down they didn't know, not realizing their kid admitted to me or the nurse that their parent gave them medicine before they came to school. At a very large pizza chain restaurant that remains widely popular, we had these perforated pans for thin crust and stuffed crust pizzas. They'd get washed in the dishwasher by the hundreds per day and at least half would still have burnt cheese and shit on them. Well, they were just stacked to dry. when making new pizzas in those pans. Sometimes the pans that were left to dry overnight grew bits of mold around the burnt cheese. We were told just to put the dough on top because otherwise we'd never keep up with the orders if we rewashed everything. The manager said, "Don't worry, it gets cooked." Oh gosh. I worked at a couple pizza places, 2 big chain ones. At one, the grease was unreal. The dishwasher basically had to be scraped once a day to get the thick film off. They didn't have an actual dishwasher either, just made the drivers clean them, and the drivers didn't want to do the dishes, so they'd just toss them in there haphazardly. I can't tell you how many times I'd find pans with a layer of oil still in them and have to send a bunch back through. My husband worked there for a short period long after I quit. He said he caught one of the managers dipping plates in the sanitizing water and just sending them back out. Disgusting. The second big chain was all hand washed and done properly, but I think that was more specific store based than anything. How many people who work with children, teachers, childcare workers, etc. don't follow confidentiality guidelines? Gossiping about families with cowhawkers, talking about children's home situations, creeping families' social media, etc. Any people who are supposed to follow confidentiality guidelines. Both my parents work in the penitentiary. Dad is a prison warden. Mom is a secretary at the probation office. I grew up with discussions of the lives of inmates and people on probation around the table. My parents would also, discreetly, point out to me people in the street they wanted me to avoid. The sex offenders, kiddie diddlers, and druggies. I worked in a restaurant, and they told me the sweet old regular the waitresses liked so much is an absolute pervert. My dad told me he'd make holes in his pockets to touch himself. I can attest to this. When I was in high school I had heart problems that required me to have multiple EKGs and ultrasounds, and eventually heart surgery. Seeing as it was my heart I often had to lay topless on a table while doctors did their thing. The hospital I went to was right next to a university, and because of that there were many times where there was an intern or resident doing the procedure. There was this one time this male intern spent about 45 minutes trying to find my heart on the ultrasound machine. I felt very uncomfortable because he was a lot more touchy and grabby than previous medical staff. After about 30 minutes he goes and asks his mentor to help him. The mentor found my heart in less than 10 seconds. But wait, there's more. After going home and trying to brush it off as nothing, I find that this resident found me on both Instagram and FB and proceeded to attempt to follow me. I blocked his creepy ass and still to this day don't know how he found my Instagram handle because it's related to my middle name which I never gave him. Edit: yes, I meant heart, not here, lol. Tired typing. And no, I sadly didn't report him. It was several years ago. I was about 17 at the time and I knew it was wrong what he did, but I just tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and move on. I know, stupid. I also didn't want to cause any more stress or drama to my family by speaking up. It's only recently that I've thought back on how inappropriate it was. Please, if this or anything happens to you that makes you feel uncomfortable, report it. You should not feel guilty for standing up for yourself. I'm sure most know this, but 99.9% of advertisements involving real people is acted and scripted. Even when the people being interviewed are indeed non-actors, they are prompted on what to say. For example, recently we interviewed a guy who won a car from one of our brands. First round. Interviewer: congrats on your win. How do you feel? Guy: UHH. Really great. It's a real surprise, to be honest. Thank you. After several rounds and coaching. Interviewer: congrats on your win. How do you feel? Guy: I feel so lucky to have won a brand car. The design and handling is first rate, and I'm most impressed by the fuel consumption. I will definitely keep on holding brand as my top car of choice.